Welcome to the HR Champions podcast with me, Phil Scott of HR Recruit. I bring to you leaders from the HR community. In our podcast, we'll be discussing the careers to date of the HR leaders, their passion for HR, and the challenges they have faced along the way. Today, I'm delighted to introduce Ian Warren, Director of People Services at Regenda Group. Regenda Group are headquartered in Liverpool and recently climbed to 6th in the Times Top Places to Work. I'm extremely interested to hear from Ian, and I want to find all about what's going on in the HR function at Regenda Group. So I'm going to pass it over to Ian. Ian, please give the listeners a brief introduction to who you are.
Thanks, Phil. Hi, everybody. Ian Warren here, Director of People Services from the Regenda Group. Regenda are basically all about regenerating people and places. So a good part of what we do is around providing homes for people to live in, whether that's affordable homes or homes available for private rent or for sale on the private market. And equally, we have part of the group which focuses on providing great training opportunities, particularly for young people, to access employment training programs such as the apprenticeship scheme or the newly created Kickstart scheme to get people into decent jobs wherever they live.
Thanks, Ian. So I want to just focus a little bit on your career, and let's start at the beginning. Can you tell our listeners how you first got into HR?
Yeah, it's a bit of a long route, I guess. When I was a kid, predictably, I didn't wake up one morning and think I really want to be a HR director. What I really wanted to be was a pilot in the Air Force, and then spectacularly failed the medical for that. And then in a fit of sort of teenage petulance, decided if I joined the army, maybe I could become a helicopter pilot by going down that route. Unfortunately, if you think about it, the rules are still going to be the same. So if you fail the medical to fly in the Air Force, you're probably going to fail the medical to fly in the army. So I ended up serving 8 years in the British Army, which I thoroughly enjoyed, but never got to fly any helicopters. But what I did discover is I really enjoyed the learning and development and training aspect. So in my role with the Army, the last 3 or 4 years was spent training young recruits in things like leadership and taking them out and doing lots of outdoor pursuits and training people. And that was when I really discovered a passion for learning and development, and also around recruitment, because part of my role was around recruiting people into the British military. That was sort of what awakened me into that. And then after I left, I managed to pursue that by primarily just being, I guess, in the right place at the right time, but also keeping my eye out for opportunities, and started to study part-time to get the CIPD qualification, and took on a range of junior level HR roles, start initially on the L&D side, and then the key role for me was moving into a HR policy development role, which on the back of that, I managed to get a role with the Equality and Human Rights Commission, which was probably the first true sort of all-round HR role for me.
Brilliant. And so what is it you like about working in human resources in particular?
For me, just linking back to that learning and development side, what I really like about working in HR is you get to be part of things that are going on around the whole organisation, which I think is quite a privileged position. And then if you ask the right questions and go and talk to people, you can understand what it is that you're able to do to help them either with their recruitment problems, to help them with their engagement problems, to understand and unpick what the skills gaps are and how you can help fix those. So it's the opportunity to work across a whole organisation and I guess problem solve and talk to people that really interests me.
And your career's, it's progressed extremely well. What's been the secret?
I think for me, the real trick has been around just speaking to people. I don't know if anyone else has seen this, but on one of my COVID-19 kind of learning points was a program called New Amsterdam, which is it's like, I think it's on Amazon Prime, and involves a guy taking over a new hospital, and he basically just walks around on day one asking people, how can I help? And then everything else he decides to do follows from that, just talking to people, getting to understand what the key issues they're facing every day. And then trying to do something to help them do it, because most of the time they've got all of the answers. So for me, I think that the secret is just certainly initially go round and talk to people, understand what their biggest challenges are, and try to work with them to help solve it. I think that's helped me hugely in my career.
And would you say there's been any particular standout achievements that have stood you in good stead?
I think probably the most difficult, but probably the most instrumental into getting me to where I am now was working at the Equality and Human Rights Commission during a really difficult time when their budgets have been slashed. So I don't know if people who are slightly older might remember the expression bonfire of the Quangos, when the government made huge cuts to a number of sort of non-governmental organisations, of which the Equality and Human Rights Commission was one. And overnight, their budget was slashed from about 50 million to about 10 million, I think. And as part of that process, we then had to make a large number of people redundant, including my team and then myself. So it was a very difficult time, but the lessons I learned from going through that difficult experience and then being part of trying to create something that was much smaller but still able to achieve the same things, if not more. That was a really interesting thing that was difficult, but I think really helped me understand how businesses work, how you go through a difficult change, how you keep people engaged and lead, even when you know that there's probably going to be a negative outcome for yourself personally at the end of that. But actually on reflection afterwards, also being able to put that experience on my CV, I think really helped me move on.
Good. And one of the things that I'm sort of realising as I'm doing these podcasts are that the more successful people in HR don't just sort of sit in a silo. They get out and about amongst the business operationally and get involved in wider operational initiatives. Is that something that you've managed to do?
Yeah, very much. I think I certainly subscribe to that view that the HR people in HR that make the most difference don't just sit in the office and look at policy. They go out and talk to people, understand what the problems and challenges are, and certainly at Regenda, I've got involved in a variety of things, from going out to some of our building sites and understanding some of the challenges that the site managers have there. And then we've used that to inform our sort of learning and development programs and link in with the challenges that are evident. So I would definitely subscribe to that principle.
And in the intro, we mentioned Regenda's placing in the Sunday Times best places to work. Talk me through that. I know when we spoke on a previous occasion, you said it was sort of almost 5 years in the making. Just let's talk to the listeners a little bit about that. How has that all come about?
Yeah, thank you. So you're right. 5 years ago, when I started at Regenda, we made a commitment to try to improve the engagement across the whole of the group, and there are different parts of the organisation within that group. So the first thing really that I tried to do was come up with a new people strategy, and critically get the buy-in from the chief exec and the senior leaders so that they would be part of making that people strategy happen. Definitely not just something that the HR team have to do. So for me, it was creating that people strategy, having buy-in from the chief exec, which I think was really critical, and then going out and selling that people strategy, not just to the leaders, but everybody. So it involved going out, doing HR roadshows to every team in the organisation, explaining what the people strategy was all about, explaining what their part in making it happen was, and trying to convince them why it's worth them investing a bit of time and effort in supporting delivering the people strategy. And for me, that selling it at the beginning, I think, was really critical to the later success. Some of the key components of that were coaching and mentoring. So we put in place a coaching mentoring program for every manager across the group. So every manager became qualified in coaching, but they also were coached themselves, and they also then had to coach other people across the business. So we're creating if you like, a cohort of qualified coaches that would go out and coach other people across the business, and that really improved engagement. It really led to people upskilling themselves, not just in coaching and mentoring, but from the coaching conversations, identifying other learning needs. And then it all kind of created, I guess, a virtuous circle of more learning and more people being engaged with learning, which got people more engaged. And I think eventually led us to that 6th place in the Best Companies survey.
And how important to you is it to have a CEO who truly believes in HR?
I think it's vitally important. I don't think we would have made any of that progress in best companies, or me enjoy working at Regenda as much as I do if it wasn't for having a CEO that buys into the principle that you're not going to achieve anything unless the people are fully engaged and on board with you. So if you don't have that, my advice would be you need to work very hard to try to change their view to get them on side, because I think it is critical.
And obviously the last few months since the emergence of COVID-19 have been pretty strange, to say the least. What support have you given the sort of employees, and have you sort of developed remote working? Just talk to me about what's been happening there.
Yeah, so probably about 60% of our workforce have been working from home since the 23rd of March. That's been a huge learning curve for all of us, myself included. I think we're only now starting to recognise some of the implications in terms of people's mental health that go along with that. So we've certainly been trying to put in place additional support around mental health, whether that be having mental health experts coming in and doing drop-in sessions where anyone can come in and talk, with a skilled facilitator that can pick up and give people tools around how they can improve their own personal resilience, or signpost if they need some support elsewhere. But also just trying to recognise the real issue of, you'll have heard the expression like Teams fatigue or Zoom fatigue, which I think I was reading an interesting article the other day, which was suggesting that all the latest scientific research shows that actually it really is more stressful and a little bit more tiring doing calls in a virtual world than they would be if they were face to face. So we absolutely recognise that, and we're now trying to encourage managers to structure their week and manage the time that they spend on calls accordingly to try to reduce that stress and fatigue, and give people an element of choice, and also encourage the use of things that are a bit old-fashioned like a telephone. But equally, we've certainly been on a journey where we've had to upskill people to be able to adapt to work virtually. And I don't mean just with the digital skills to be able to engage effectively and manage, team meetings via either Microsoft Teams or Zoom, but also in getting managers to shift their approach to how they manage people. So being far more focused on managing by the outcomes rather than how much time somebody spent sitting at a desk, which you can no longer monitor. So I think there's a lot of positives that can come out of that in terms of encouraging managers to embrace a more outcome focused mentality rather than perhaps the old-fashioned presenteeism, but we're still on a journey working towards that.
What leadership programs have been implemented across the organisation?
I think there's three big ones. One I spoke about already, which was the coaching and mentoring for all managers. The second one I would highlight, really, we called the LEAD program, which was really aimed not at people who are already managers, but aimed at people who aspire to be a manager in the next sort of 12 to 24 months. And we found a huge interest in that from people that wanted to make the step up into a management position, but perhaps didn't quite have the confidence or the skills to be confident in putting themselves forwards for that. So we created a cohort that were given a mentor with a senior person across the business, and then a series of workshops focusing on things like confidently giving presentations, some leadership advice, and some basic kind of how to be a manager and the more technical sides of being a manager as well, and put that all together in a 12-month program. And that's been really successful. And we started that 5 years ago now. And what we're starting to see is that pipeline of people who have been through that program now progressing through management positions and being really strong candidates for more senior roles. So we're really starting to see the benefit of that program now 5 years on. And I guess the last one we called the Regenda Way, which was really just a management development program focused for people who are already managers across the group. And it's really a kind of how do we do things around here? So hence the Regenda Way of doing things. That was really based on the values of the organization, some of the key sort of processes and policies in terms of how do we recruit people, how do you manage money, how do you manage projects, and how do you manage sort of financial challenges in the Regenda way across the group. And we found that to be really important in, I guess, instilling the values and the behaviours that we want to see in everybody, but also giving everyone a common set of language and a common set of what is expected of them as managers and leaders in the group. Good.
And I know sort of motivation and is a massive thing, and the culture is a big thing to a lot of organisations. What other initiatives have Regenda been doing that's you can see that really sort of helps with the culture and things like that?
We put in place something called the Do Good Feel Good program to try to, I guess, harness the enthusiasm and to raise engagement levels across the group. So, as the name would suggest, that has two key parts to it. The do good part is trying to organise things where our staff can get involved that will have a positive social impact. And some of the parts of the group already do that anyway. So we have people volunteer to go into a children's centre called Centre 56, which provides childcare to women and children that have been victims of domestic violence. And a number of our staff volunteer to go in and do some DIY work and then paint it and provide new sort of toys for it. And that actually gave people the opportunity to devote their own time into something that they felt was going to make a really valuable social contribution. And that actually helped raise engagement levels from those people involved. And we've done more things sort of like that all around sort of Merseyside and Greater Manchester. I guess what that program also does is focus on the sort of feel good aspect as well. So we've had a number of events from yoga, or more recently sort of virtual yoga since COVID-19 struck. And every year, bar this year with COVID-19, we've had an annual dragon boat race where people from all across different teams in the group have competed against each other on the docks in Liverpool to win the most sought after prize in Regenda, which is the Dragon Boat Crown. And that's been a really great event every year. And it's a real shame we haven't been able to do it this year, but I look forward hopefully to be able to do that in 2021.
Okay, and I'm going to move this on to a little bit about yourself. Obviously, leadership's a big thing. Who are 3 people who have been most influential to you?
I think the first one was my boss when I was a fairly junior officer in the British Army, called Philip Astell, and I think he was a really great example of how do you engage people and get them to sort of follow you because they want to, not because of your job title or because of any sense of compulsion, but just in terms of finding something that engages people and gets them really enthusiastic about whatever it is that you're asking them to do. For me, he was a really great example of that, and he did that by being interested in people, asking questions, and convincing you that he really cared about who you were, what you wanted, and demonstrated how he would help you get there.
Okay, and who was the other ones?
The other 2 as well, sorry. More recently, I think that the chief exec where I am now, Michael Burkitt, has been a great example, again, of somebody with a very clear vision and who was able to articulate that vision to everybody, from an operative who goes out and is a tradesman, right the way through to the chair of the board. He can sell his vision to both of those people equally, and I think that's a real skill. So I try to learn from him every day, and he certainly has a very clear vision, and you certainly understand what he needs you to do on a daily, weekly, and sort of annual basis. And I find that quite inspirational. So I certainly try to learn from him. And the third person I'd highlight is a lady called Georgia Parker, who was part of our coaching and mentoring program, and she came in and upskilled everybody who was a leader or manager at Regenda, including me, about how you coach people and how you mentor people, and some of the tools and techniques that she shared with us and sort of role modeled, I think have been really valuable to me. And I still speak to her regularly and pick her brains on things when I'm after a bit of advice on how best to tackle often a difficult or sensitive problem.
Good. And so as a leader then, how do you learn, and sort of what personal development do you do?
I think I learn best by doing, and I've just been watching the CIPD conference over the last couple of days, and there's been a lot of talk of sort of learning in the moment, or in the moment of need, where, you know, in this day and age, I guess, if you want to learn something simple, you'd probably just Google it, and then you get a video that tells you in 3.5 minutes how to, you know, change a plug or to rewire something or another. Shows my lack of DIY skills when I said something or another. So I think for me, I enjoy learning most by doing something, or somebody demonstrating it, me having a go and copying it. And I think that in particularly the COVID-19 world, there's a lesson in there for all of us about how we can shift the way we do learning and development to be a little bit more in the moment of need. When somebody needs to learn to do something, they can just access a little video that shows them how to initiate a Microsoft Teams call, or to change something on the screen. A little video is probably the most effective way of doing it, but it's also my preferred style of learning, I guess.
Good. And your career, is it always gone swimmingly, or have you faced any setbacks? And if so, how did you overcome those?
No, I don't think. If I was looking back on it, it certainly wouldn't be like a really nice, organised chart showing progression. There were definitely some backward steps, and there were definitely some significant drops at times. When I was made redundant from the Equality Human Rights Commission, or at one point I worked for an organisation that I left under difficult circumstances for, and probably at the time thought, oh my goodness, how am I going to come back from this? And I think the key lesson I learned there is actually it's okay to fail, and sometimes spectacularly. It's what you learn from it, and how resilient you can be in keeping a positive mindset and turning those difficult moments into something that helps you do your next job better. So I think that's the key thing I've learned, is no matter how bad it might feel in the moment, there is always something positive you can take away from it and translate that into a future success.
Okay, give me one common myth that you think exists about the HR profession that you'd like to dispel.
I think the horrible expression tea and sympathy, I rally against that description of HR. I think a lot of the HR professionals that I talk to and meet today are very focused on adding real value to the business, whether that's financial, whether that's social, or whether that's just making a difference to the communities they serve, making a difference to the employees, making a difference to the shareholders or the stakeholders. I think HR professionals are now very outcome focused, which is a real positive.
And have you made any mistakes at all? If so, what advice would you give to others so they don't make the same mistake?
I think I've certainly made mistakes. I think my natural tendency is to enjoy the big picture stuff, and some of the theoretical sort of strategic stuff I find most exciting. The risk of that is I can have a natural inclination to shy away from the detail, and that's certainly caused me problems in the past where I haven't paid quite enough attention to the small print and the details. So I think my advice really is understand your strengths and weaknesses as a person, be clear what they are, put in place either a way to prevent yourself falling into those obvious traps that you might set yourself, whether that's have someone else in your team that's really great at the detail that can prevent you from making those mistakes, or build a team around you of different skills and people that aren't afraid to stand up and challenge you and point out things that you might have missed, and be big enough to listen to them when they point those things out.
And what advice would you have to others who might be aspiring to get where you've got to?
I think the most valuable bit of advice is have confidence in yourself. Be prepared to step into something, even if you're not 100% sure you have necessarily all of the skills. You can probably learn most of it as you go along with the right support in place. And probably most importantly, just keep your eyes open. I think for me, there are maybe 2 or 3 key opportunities which led to me getting to a director position. And if I hadn't have been, if I hadn't had my eyes open, it would have been very easy to miss those opportunities. So I think you don't know when they're going to arise. You do need to be a little bit opportunistic, and you need to recognize those opportunities and grab them with both hands when they do present themselves.
So other than your current profession, what other profession would you choose if you could?
I think the honest answer to that is I would probably, if I wasn't a HR director, I would almost certainly be an aging ski instructor somewhere in France, which was something that I very nearly did when I first left the army. I actually did 2 seasons in a ski resort called Maribel and taught skiing, and got to the point where in my head it was, do I carry on doing this for the rest of my life, or do I come back and get a proper job instead? And chose the proper job instead, and I don't regret that to this day, but it was quite a close call, aged, I don't know, 26, 27 at the time, and it could have gone either way, but on reflection, I'm very glad I stuck with the HR career.
Don't blame you. I did a ski season. In fact, I'm booked to go to Maribel in February. Whether that's going to happen, okay. Time will tell. But talk about that another time. So, listen, that's been really good to talk to you, Ian. If anyone wants to reach out to you, what's the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, very happy. People either want to look me up on LinkedIn or drop me an email. I don't know whether you have the email addresses to give out, or happy to give it out afterwards.
I think a lot of people are on LinkedIn, but we can, anyone can reach out to us, and we can pass that on for sure. A massive thank you to yourself, Ian, for doing the podcast. It's, like I said, 20 odd minutes has just flown past. Hope everyone has enjoyed this episode of the HR Champions podcast, and stay tuned to listen to future episodes. Thank you very much. Thanks, Ian.
Thank you. Thanks all.